Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 17th edition of Paraty em Foco International Photo Festival. My name is Paulo Marcos, and I've been working with the festival for a few years. And we'll be interviewing today Martin Roemers. He is a photographer from Holland. Hi. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Paulo.
How are you?
I'm well. I'm great. Thanks.
Okay, good. So I'm going to read the little thing here about you. Martin established himself as a conceptual photographer after an award-winning career in documentary photojournalism. Currently, he works on long-term projects centered on the human dimension of profound societal changes. His main concerns relate to life under siege, conurbação, and mass mobility using custom-tailored photography approaches. Martin's visually arresting rendering of his subject create an opening for personal reflection and interpretation. Martin has published multiple books, and his widely exhibited work resides in various major collections of museums, institutions, and private collectors. So please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Martin.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. I think we can start discussing a little bit about Metropolis, which is the exhibition that Paraty is going to hold. I think,
sure, yeah.
And I think Tel can start showing the pictures. Yes. And is this your latest, most recent work, Martin? Or no?
Yes, it is. It is the most recent work. Well, the work that is finished. So this is it resulted in a book. It resulted in a traveling exhibition. That's already a few years ago. It's still traveling. It's still being exhibited. And at this moment, I'm working on another project, but that's for a later time.
And when you say that you work on long-term projects, what do you mean long-term?
Well, most of the projects I do are made in a long time. So, for example, this project Metropolis, I spent 8 years making all the work. So that's basically it. Takes a long time. It's long-term projects.
Yes.
Sometimes I can do a project in like 1 or 2 years. There's also a project which took me 12 years. So that's more or less how it works. And if possible, it's not always possible, I try to work on several projects at the same time. Because then I keep an open mind for other things as well. It doesn't always work, but I try to do that.
And you in a way, you start creating different approaches, and the works, they intercept each other, right? When you work on multiple projects at the same time, they kind of feed one another.
Well, yes, they do, and sometimes the projects are more or less related. Not always the case, but it gives me. I'm more open for all aspects of both works. It means that I'm not focused and very narrow-minded, looking at this one project I'm working on, but keep an open mind for all the aspects which I encounter also in the other work. So for me, it's refreshing to do that. But as I said, it's not always possible. Sometimes it's a project can be so time-consuming that I don't have any space to do something else. So yeah.
And Martin, we are looking at one of the photographs of Metropolis here. Talk about a little bit about Metropolis. How did you have the idea? Of course, the name, the title, it's pretty much self-explanatory. But because it seems to me that you probably started this 10, 15 years ago, that the issue of the metropolis and the megalopolis it's among us more than ever. I think I think by in 30 years or so, 70% of the population of the world will be living in large cities.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a big issue.
Yeah, it is. Well, actually, I came on this idea when a few years before I really started with this project. I was in Bombay, and I was walking in the city of Bombay, and I was really overwhelmed by all the impressions of this big city, all the crowds, the no personal space, the noise, the smell. It was all overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And
the honking of the cars.
Honking, yeah, especially in India, it's a national hobby. And I've always had this big interest in city life, but I never worked on a project on it. But it was always on my mind. But when I was standing there in Bombay, I was thinking, how can you visualize all those impressions? All those people you see there, no space, the sounds. How can you visualize that in only one image?
Mm-hmm.
And so that started me thinking, and I left Bombay, and I went with my wife to Goa, where the beach life, the Copacabana of India. And actually there I spent a whole week thinking about how can I deal with the subject? How can I visualize the character of such a city? And in the end, I thought what you see in Bombay, it is energy, it is speed, and you have to do something with these two things, and it also has to do with time. So there are so many things happening in a short period of time, or even in a second. Everything is changing, and so I thought, well, maybe I will make a cityscape and experiment with time exposures.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to Bombay, and I found a place in the big Muslim quarter near the Muhammad Ali Road, and there was this old sleazy hotel. I was allowed to use one of their rooms. So from an elevated position, I had a view on the crossroads, and I spent there the whole afternoon, the whole evening, making only one photo over and over again, the same photo, experimenting with times. So I know I have this frame here. I know my image starts at this corner, and it ends there. And what happens in between? Who's coming in? Who's going out? What is not moving? The buildings, the things on the street, but there are people who are moving. There's traffic. So I'm looking for this balance between moving objects, people, and static objects. And so over and over, I made the same shots. It was all analog. And
4x5 camera, a large format camera.
No, it was like a 35 millimeters. It was and so I developed all the films, and I analyzed everything, and most of the images were unusable, but a few really stood out. And because of this long time, you see this whoosh of like a flow through the streets, and I thought, well, this is something I can work with. I can use this as an instrument to tell a story about life in a city, in an Indian city, because I started with Indian cities. So I went back, and this time with a medium format camera, 6x7, and I started to work in Indian cities like New Delhi, Bombay, Kolkata, and
which are very large cities with a lot of, like you said, a lot of noise, a lot of cars, a lot of people,
yes,
animals and everything.
It's the ultimate city. You're right. Yes, there's so much to see. And when I was working in India, there was there was this news from the UN Population Fund that there in that period more than half of the world population lived in a city, and so that was big news. That was the first time this happened. And so I thought by myself, well, this changes everything, and these city populations, they are growing and growing, and well, as you said, in several years, 70% of the world population will live in a city. So I'm going to address this subject. So I'm going to do this project worldwide, not only India, but there are so many ways you can encounter such a project. So what shall I do? So my angle was, there is this list also from the United Nations of the biggest cities in the world. It's a definition. So when a city like Rio and like Sao Paulo, when they have more than 10 million inhabitants, then it's called a megacity. And at that time, there was a list of 22 megacities, and so my idea was
cities that have a population of over 10 million.
Over 10 million, yeah. So half of these cities, they are in Asia, and the rest is divided over some in Africa, North America, South America, a few in Europe. And so what I did is actually I followed the list. I went from city to city to city and photographed everything, or I photographed there for a period of time, and so it was actually following the list of the United Nations, make the megacity list.
And is there any megacity in Netherlands? No.
Now we have Amsterdam, and it's the biggest city, and there's not even 1 million people who live there. I think about 700,000 or so. It's all very tiny.
And this, what's interesting about this series, this project, is like you mentioned, you have the feeling that you're looking at the city through two different times. The one that you can, the flow of the people, the flow of the cars, the trains, everything that moves, and the city itself that doesn't move, doesn't go anywhere, but it's alive anyway.
So, right. Yeah. It's about the balance between static and moving elements. And so so what I try to do with such an image, so before I go, I read about a city. I try to get as much information as I can. At the same time, I'm trying to find a fixer in that city. So most of the times I look for a young photographer who can help me, who can join me while I'm there, and they understand what I want. And so together we before I come, we make a list of possible locations. So most of the time these are the busy locations in the city, where you see a lot of economy, where there's a lot of traffic, where people go to work, where the shopping is, the economic hearts of the city, and we visit those locations, and then depending on where I am, for example, in a city in Pakistan or in Bangladesh, there is when the sun is shining, there is a very hard bright light, so you can actually only shoot at against dawn, so when against sunset. And so you have a time frame of 2, maximum 3 hours where you can do this shooting. So then you should know where you should be. You should also know what these pictures have in common is not only the time lapse exposure, but it's also photographed from a high elevation point. So I'm using whatever the city provides me, like a roof or stairs or a bridge or whatever there is. But you should prepare it as much as you can. And
to have
so
this
when
consistency. You have
yes,
consistency.
yes, you have this consistency. It's yes, that it's what the brings the images together, and and then it becomes like a waiting game, because I want to include in such an image as many elements as is possible. For example, we just saw the image of Calcutta. Well, it is the cover of the book. One of the things I read about Calcutta is that they have here these hand-pulled rickshaws on the so most of the times rickshaw, they are they use a motorcycle for it or bicycle, but like more than 100 years ago, hand-pulled rickshaw was a very common transportation mode in whole Asia. And today, but only in Calcutta. It's the last city where you can find it. The city of Calcutta tries to ban these rickshaws out of the city for decades, but they do not succeed. So I want to include such an element in one of these images if I can. But it's also a bit of a problem for me, because these rickshaws, they are always on the move. So they only stop when they have to, because when I expose for 2 seconds or so, you can't make a visible image of a riding a rickshaw. So I know that at this particular junction, that every 10 minutes you have this tramway passing, and all traffic stops. So I'm waiting for the moment that the tram passes. It's like 10 seconds or so, and then I hope that there will be a rickshaw stopping, but it's something you can never predict. So this taking this photo took me like two days to make this only shot. So so that's as far as preparation goes. And so from city to city, I try to include characteristic elements. For example,
the hand
you see
it's
like, for example, the hand-pulled rickshaw, but it's also I also want to show that the city is about it's about economy. People go to the city to have a better life. Especially in many cities, they grow and they grow because when you come from a poor rural area, in the city you can find work, you can make money, but not everybody succeeds, and that's a big problem for cities, because people end in the margins of a city. They like in Asia, you have slums. There are many homeless people. For example, the image of New York, which
that's real. Is this New York?
Yeah, that's New York City. And whenever
there's a homeless there.
Yeah, so he's holding a cardboard. I'm homeless. Give him money. But so whenever I'm in North American cities, it's always astonishing how many homeless people you see in Los Angeles, in New York. That's it. I mean, it's the the US is it's a kind of a hard society. You have this American dream. You go to America, you become rich, but if you don't, then you're in big trouble, and you can end on the streets. And that's something I noticed there. And so I definitely want to include something like this with homeless people in an American city.
Because
on the other
Martin,
hand,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, because that is in a way a symbol that this society, this American dream society, failed. In a way, it symbolized that.
Yeah.
And he's sitting right next to a garbage can.
Yes.
That's very symbolic too.
Yeah, for some it fails, but for others they succeed. I mean, there are many. That's the I think that's the issue with North America, with the US, that there are many big differences. I mean, when you are rich, go to the US. When you are poor, go to Europe, because there is more. The differences are not as big as they are in the US. There is. They in some way they take care of people who have a hard time. So it's easier than to live in Europe than in North America. So the same thing is actually also for like India. You don't have that image here, but I will show you that. That was one of the surprises for me, actually. So this is the Metropolis book. You can find all images in this, and this
bring to your left a little bit, Martin.
Yeah,
that's better.
So what you see here, I hold it a little bit closer, but this is actually this is Bombay, in Colaba, the heart of the commercial district. There is a slum area, people live there, but they don't have the infrastructure for to go to a toilet. So what you see here is that they use the beach as a toilet. So you can see like 7 or 8 men. They are all sitting there and doing what they are doing. And that happens in Bombay. And that's all these people who come to Bombay. They are about around 25 million. So there's a big unofficial economy. There's not enough housing for all these newcomers, and there's no infrastructure. So they improvise and they use the beach as a toilet. I mean, that's a big problem, of course.
And everybody uses, right? You can see
what you
children.
See here. This is. I'm sorry.
You can even see children in that photograph.
Yeah, here too. I mean, this is a slum area in Dhaka, in the capital of Bangladesh. So they improvise their huts along the railroads, and but I mean they live there. They even have their market there. So these are issues I want to include in this series. And for example, the other side, I also want to include that. So I will show you an image of Los Angeles. And this is, sorry, it's such a big book.
Los Angeles, with the two girls posing in front of a car that doesn't belong to them, probably.
It's a $1 million car, a Bugatti. It is.
It's a Bugatti.
It's a Bugatti. It's parked on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. So it's the most expensive shopping street in LA, maybe in the US,
maybe in the world.
maybe in the world. It wouldn't surprise me, but I mean, so that's displaying wealth, and these girls, it's not their car, but they want to, identify them, so it's their wish. That's what I want to be. That's they want that is the lifestyle they desire.
They
so
dream.
Also, they're the American dream.
Yeah, sure.
So I try to include as much as these elements as I can, and so it's rich versus poor, but it's also political issues.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, for example, we stay a bit in America. I was on Times Square. And I was a little hesitant, because I thought, well, when I was standing on Times Square, I thought, wow, this is amazing, and this is so much metropolis. But on the other hand, there are so many photographers who made such great work there. So what can I possibly add to that? And so I was standing on these chairs, on these stairs, in the middle of Times Square, and suddenly I saw a small protest emerge out of the crowd. So there were these 6 guys in orange coveralls, and what they were protesting against the Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba, where they held the prisoners from the alleged terrorists. I knew this wouldn't last very long, because it's forbidden to protest on Times Square. So it took about 2 minutes, and then they were escorted out by the police. But I was able to make this image, and so suddenly this image of Times Square becomes a very political image, and then it's something I can use, and so I try to include as much as I can. So this is political, but also things which are about religion, about culture. So, for example, in Brazil, I went to Sao Paulo when there was a carnival. So I wanted to include that as well. So for every city, if possible, some characteristic stories, and all this together has to tell a story about what is life like what is like living in a city, or what is like sometimes surviving in a city.
Survive, yes. This one we are looking at, is this São Paulo or Rio?
This is Rio.
This is Rio. That's Copacabana. Looks like Copacabana.
It's not Copacabana. It's well, actually, it's something we were driving there, and we saw this man lying on the street, and and I thought, well, this is part of city life. He lies there. People are just walking past him. It's a quite bizarre situation. So yeah.
That is also a political image in that sense.
In that sense, it's also a political image. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And what's interesting about this image, in all the images, especially the one on the cover, is that you're talking about different issues. Like you said, you talk about the mega cities, the mobility, the contrast between very rich and very poor, and you're talking about the people that have it and the people that dream to have it. Like the 2 girls posing in front of the Bugatti in the Rio Drive. And all these issues, but you're also talking about time. You're talking about time in different aspects all the time. Like the picture in the photograph of the cover, you have different times. You have the time of the thing that is fluid, the train, the taxi, which is waiting for the train. That's a different time, and you have the time, the historical time of the which, how do you say that again? The pool, this thing that
the hand pull direction, yeah.
Yes. So different times, you know, that's what's interesting. And
Yeah.
the time reveals itself in different aspects, in different levels, in different objects, in different images within the same image.
Yes, that's right. So basically, I try to visualize the the speed of living in a city, and so within this concept, I try to tell as many stories as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically it's a very simple instrument. I take a high vantage point, use this time exposure, but then I'm waiting for the stories to happen, and so it's always a waiting game. Fotojournalist, so I covered some conflict zones in which Dutch troops were involved. For example, this is in Kosovo. Just to give you a short impression, this is a Russian army base in Kosovo in 2000. So when there was big trouble in Kosovo, Bosnia in 1999, Afghanistan 2002. So the second year the Western troops were there. Entertainment at a NATO base in Kabul.
More entertainment.
Russian soldiers. I'm sorry?
More entertainment.
More entertainment, right? This is me. Well, so this is a really documentary photography. So when I was in Afghanistan, I worked together with the Dutch Army Museum. I proposed to them a kind of a cooperation about photographing the Dutch troops there, but my condition was I'm an independent photographer. I do it the way I want. It's my angle. I don't want any interference from you or the Ministry of Defense, and they wanted to work with people from outside the defense organization, so they agreed working like this. So I could basically do whatever I wanted to do. So when I was in Kabul, I was in when there was not so much to do for me on the NATO base or outside. I visited Kabul, and I saw there Afghan street photographers working with this wooden box camera. Maybe you heard of it. It's called a camera aphorie in Afghan. It's a very antique process. So you see this box here. Inside the box there is a camera of 80 years old. It doesn't have film, but it uses pieces of photographic paper. And in the box there is they have chemicals like developer and you can fix it, and some water. So very like our ancestors made portraits on the street like 100 years ago. They still use that technique over there. So I had my photo taken. I thought, wow, this is really amazing. This is something I could work with to do a portrait story about these Dutch troops which are working here in Afghanistan. Because I was thinking, because all these Dutch soldiers, or every soldier, of course, that they are all young men. They haven't seen much of the world, and they suddenly out of the blue they are being dropped in Afghanistan. It's kind of a hostile territory for them. And what does that do to you as a person? Does it show? Can you tell that? Can you see it in their faces? So I used this camera and I made these these portraits.
With a camera, you kind of borrow a camera from one of these street photographers, right?
I did. So I also took the photographer who used it. He came along, of course, but then as an assistant, because I use his camera, and the African photographer he did the chemical processing in the box. And you have to consider that if you make a portrait with this camera, they use photographic paper. It's not very sensitive to light. So every portrait you see here, it has an exposure of about 10 seconds.
Just like old times.
Just like old times, when they were forced to work with the material, the low sensitive material, which was available.
And that creates a link to photography history, because it's one of a kind, right? You don't have a negative, so it's not, you cannot reproduce this image.
Well, you can in a way, because
theory.
it's yeah. Well, it's a two-step system. So when you make the exposure on photographic paper, you get a negative, and then you photo. Yeah, so you and you photograph the negative again, and then you have a positive.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But for me, the important thing was to have the negative, because it has the best quality, and I scan it, and this is the result. So this was more. Was more in the time that I said goodbye to photojournalism and started to work on more conceptual projects. And this was one of the first projects of this.
Great, incredible. So it started in a let's say a photojournalism environment, but it evolved to a more conceptual.
Yes, because I was thinking that I was there in Afghanistan, and before I was there, I already thought, well, I'm going to see more or less the same things I've seen on the Balkans and like in Kosovo, but it's of course it's not one-on-one. It's not the same, but many elements of what these people are doing there, that is the same, but it's in a different environment. So I don't want to do the same thing again in a different environment. So I have to think of something else, something new. But I didn't have a clue of what that could be when I was there. But I thought, well, I said to myself, I have to keep an open mind and see if there's anything I can do in a different way. I'm going to do that. So that's when I met these Afghan photographers, and I talked with them, and so we end up improvising this open air studio on this NATO base, and started to make this portrait series.
Yeah, it's very poetic, the whole process, of finding the photographer, the camera, the wooden camera, the 10 seconds exposure. Everything it's totally out of the photojournalism environment. Like
it is, yes, it's totally different, and it was actually the first portrait story. So after that I worked on a story about war veterans, and the veterans of World War II. The background of this is that when in Europe, when you talk about the veterans of World War II, most of Europe was by Germany in World War II. So there's still this idea of you were either right or wrong. You were okay or you were not okay. If you were German, you were not okay. You were not on the right side. And when you were allied, were British or Russian, or then then it's okay. And this stereotyping is still being used today. And my idea is that people who were fighting this war, they more or less have the same background. Most of them were sent. They didn't want to, but they were sent, and when they kind of volunteered, they fought for their country, not specifically for the political leadership. So they have more in common than they have differences. So my idea was to make portraits of all parties involved, so the former enemies who were fighting in that war, so and the Russians and the British and Americans, but also the Germans. So with this angle, I tried to make a portrait story of. I made a portrait story of 40 veterans. I made a portrait, but the portrait is actually only half of the project. The other half is an interview I did with everybody. So my question was like, what did you do in the war? What happened, and how did you deal with that in later life? Did it affect your later life? And so people tell about their time in the war.
And like you said, Martin, it doesn't really depend in which side you're in, because it's the anguish, the fear, the way you look at war for these veterans are pretty much the same. Doesn't matter if you're Russian.
It's all the same. Yeah.
Because they're all humans.
Yes, well, that's right. And so I'm in my own country, in the Netherlands. We like every European country which was occupied by the Germans, we every year have a commemoration that we remember the dead. There is this big gathering in the heart of Amsterdam. Many foreign guests are invited, but never the German officials are never invited, because they were the enemy at the time. In other countries, they do invite the Germans, also countries which were occupied by Germany. But in the Netherlands, they are very strict, and they hold on to that. We have very good relations with Germany, that they are our neighbors, but we do not invite them for this World War II commemoration event, and that's something I think which should change. So that's also one of the reasons I did this subject. This is for example, a man from Germany. Well, this is a German veteran.
I mean, his last name is almost Hitler.
Yeah, Hitler. Yeah,
Hitler.
it is. Yeah. Also, women, of course. This is an army nurse from Russia, from the Soviet Union. This is a Dutch guy. So the approach is always the same. You have a face. I focus very much on the eyes. It's the eyes. They have to tell the story, and it's all the same concept for every veteran from every country. So this form, this is the instrument which unites them in a kind of way. And
somewhat you use a different approach, but you use this to unite them, just like in Metropolis. You use the long exposure and the vantage point from above, right?
Yes. Well, I think that there's also another thing which it has in common with Metropolis, is that it's I try to tell something about such a subject from different angles. In Metropolis, it's about, for example, when you are poor in a mega city, when you are rich in a mega city, and this project about the veterans is about the enemies from. And the former enemies, people who once fought against each other. I photograph and talk with the guy from Germany and the Russian nurse, the lady from Russia. So it's a perspective from different sides, from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
And so this story, The Never-Ending War, is about...
Martin, when did you do this series of portraits of veterans?
This series is from 2004 and 2005. So from what I was saying, that The Never-Ending War is about the combatants, the people who fight in a war. But I did a follow-up project of this project, and this is about the victims of. So this is a project about the blind veterans, or not only veterans, the blind victims of the Second World War. Mm-hmm. When I was working on the veterans project, I met this man, Mr. Bentley. And Mr. Bentley was blind, and he told me he was blinded by the in the invasion of Normandy in 1944, when the Allied did an invasion in France. He was blinded by a German grenade. But what really struck me was that he said, "Well, I am now living in a home, especially for blinded war veterans." Mm-hmm. So that meant that there were so many blind victims, so many blind veterans, that they have this infrastructure for it. They have mm-hmm. houses for these people. Mm-hmm. I was really amazed, because I had never heard of such an institution, yeah. And I did research on this, and it turned out that the many bigger countries who go to war on a kind of a regular basis, they have this kind of infrastructure for their blind veterans or other people involved. Like in Germany, you have a very large organization for people who were blinded in World War II. There were tens of thousands of people who were victims. Were blinded during World War II. So not only military veterans, but also civilians. Mm-hmm. So this project was about these blind victims, but again from different sides. So not only people, so not the former enemies, but also children who became blind in World War II because they found ammunition on the street, or people who were civilians who were hiding during a bombing, and they were hit anyway by fragments of a bomb. And these are all terrible stories people tell you.
And Martin, these pictures, these photos, they have a kind of a paradox, because they are blind, but they are looking at us.
They are. You think they seem to be looking at you, but they don't see you. They don't see anything, of course. And it was also strange to do their portrait, because you make a portrait of somebody who can't see you. He or she can never see this portrait. So this was kind of a strange experience.
Yeah, like it's almost like they are in a prison. Within themselves.
Yes, well, I mean that
inside their head.
Yes, well, I mean that all these people they are old, and they all accepted more or less their fate. They live with it. But there was also this woman who became blind very gradually. It took several decades. And so since when I met her, it was actually since a few years that she was really for 100% blind. And she also told me, it still feels like I'm living in a prison. You never get used to this.
Never get used to it.
And I mean, this story is about the people of the victims of World War II, but it's bigger than that, because
Yes.
people are still being blinded by conflicts or wars today.
And malnutrition.
And yes, you mean becoming blind by malnutrition? Yeah.
Yes. Incredible.
So it's so that's a story I wanted to tell. On the same time, I have to say I'm not an activist, but I do want to tell this story. I make a portrait. I like with the other projects, I also do an interview with everyone I photograph, and I let people look at the images and read the text, and they have to draw their own conclusions out of it. So it's not something I don't want people to think in a certain way. I'm an artist here. I'm not a demonstrator. I'm not a protester. Not an activist.
But
so these are yes, please.
Once you put the words that they said during the recorded interview, you contextualize the photographs too. You don't influence the opinion of the people, but you give more elements for them to judge for themselves and come to their own conclusions, which is very interesting, because image is one thing and narrative, written narrative, is a different thing, and you intersect both and create a new world for the people that are viewing the photographs.
Yes, well, that's so when I'm doing a project, I try to I'm thinking about the best way how to tell such a story, because when I'm only make a photo, only do this portrait, for me it's not enough. You need more information. You need to know something about this man or woman. What happened, and then you need writing. You have to write a story about them. So that's why in this project, I'm both a photographer and I'm a writer. And so basically, I asked everybody two questions. What happened in the war? How did you get blind? And the other question is, how did you deal with your handicap in later life? And I think that in general, you can say that these people, they are very strong.
Yes.
They adapt. They want to lead normal lives. So most of them, they were married after the war. They had a job. So not any job, of course, but there are a lot of things blind people can do. They can be a stenographer. They can be a physiotherapist. They can be an academic. They lived their life. They had a kind of a normal life. That was the also for me the surprising thing of this.
Yeah,
and,
there's a huge amount of empathy in this project.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that's also what I. For me, it's also important, empathy in all the projects that I do. I focus on that, but again, I leave it to the people who see the work. So they have to draw their own conclusions.
Yes.
So it's a conflict series, and there's also I think the latest story I want to share with you is the conflict of my own time. As I mentioned, I grew up in the Cold War. That's Europe was a kind of like a soft conflict zone at the time. It was always it was always a topic on school. Much discussion. It was part of daily life. And when I already was working as a photographer, and I was still on art school, I think. The Berlin Wall came down, and suddenly everything on the other side of this Iron Curtain is open. We could travel to all those satellites of the Soviet Union. Home, the troops from the east, and what they left behind was all these deserted landscapes, these military landscapes, all the infrastructure, which was not in use anymore, and you could find it in the whole of Europe. So very shortly after the wall came down, I immediately went to the surroundings of Berlin, because Berlin there were hundreds of thousands of Russian troops. They were stationed there, and I visited the barracks which they left behind, and it was indeed it was empty. There was you could find the traces, and I did make some photographs over there. But when I came back and I looked at the work, I thought, well, this what we are actually dealing here with is the end of an era. And when you as a photographer, when you want to symbolize this end of the era, you maybe it should be more in a state of decay, and this decay was not visible yet, so it was still fresh. So I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to leave this for some years, and I come back when it's my time. I come back when the decay has started, when nature takes over all these terrains. So I waited like 7-8 years, and I tried to photograph as much as these particular Cold War sites as I could, and again also from different perspectives. So from Cold War sites from the east and Cold War sites from the west.
I see.
What we are, so there are several kinds of places which have which had a purpose in many conflicts. Or, for example, and these are for me the most interesting places. For example, this is an old shooting range which the Russians used in East Germany, and this place has history. You see this bunker, it has the shape of a little face.
Yes.
It was built during World War I, so the Germans did their practice shooting here to prepare for World War I. The Nazis also did practice here, but there are no traces of that. But then the Nazis left, and the Russians came, and they used this old Soviet tank here for target practicing. The Russians left, and now the Bundeswehr, it's the West Germans, so the German army of today. You see this red pole in the middle, and it's a signpost, and they use it again for the same purpose. So there are several layers of history in this particular site. So this layer gives an extra dimension for such an image.
This image is incredible. It looks like the building is melting.
Yes, it looks like it's melting, or it has something. It doesn't look real, but it is. What you see here is actually it's a bunker on an old Soviet naval base in Latvia. Latvia is one of the 3 small countries in the Baltics. They were part of the Soviet Union many decades ago, and this bunker is in the sea, in the Baltic Sea, and what you see here is it's very long exposure of like 20, 30 minutes. So everything is moving. The sea is moving. Only the bunker remains still as it is. So that's why it gives this kind of poetic atmosphere.
Yeah.
So within this series, it's a kind of a strange image.
It's a very, very powerful contrast between the building that it's so solid that at the same time is tilted, or it's totally decay, and this milky water, this milky element that is underneath the building. This contrast is very interesting to it, very powerful.
Yes, that's what's that's why it's really a different image from the other ones. So what this story is about 70 images in 10 European countries. So basically from London till Moscow and everything in between.
And this is the cover of the book.
Yeah, well, there actually are two. There are two books because it was reprinted and it has a different color. But the first edition had a bunker, and the second edition has the tank on the shooting range, which the first image I told about. And well, the hard thing with this project was not the shooting itself, but it was more finding these locations, because all troops went home. It's not really a secret anymore, but it's not important anymore. It's kind of lost its interest, and it's hard to find. So finding these places was actually the most difficult part of this project. So I had to you have these people who look for these places as a kind of a hobby, like urban explorers. You have bunker explorers. They have information they were willing to share with me. So when I went to, for example, to East Germany, I had a kind of a list from objects I wanted to visit. Most of the times I could get permission to go there. Sometimes it was hard to trace the owner of it, and sometimes I had to climb a wall to enter it and talk with the people who live there. Maybe they knew some other locations. So this is also why it took me very long to complete this this story. So this took me like 11 years to do the whole story.
Sorry, it takes a long time because it's almost an archaeological approach.
It is a kind of an archaeological approach. It's it's actually what it is, and this is the. So in this project, I'm a kind of an archaeologist and a photographer. But yes, that's what it is. And well, the special thing of this project is that it's being exhibited for over a decade now. It has traveled a lot.
Martin, I think we're running out of time. I would suggest that we'll maybe pass some half a dozen photographs so we can wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Well. I actually the interesting thing of this project is that it's running for a very long time. So it's being exhibited since 2009. And the reason that it's being exhibited until today, for example, next year there's a solo exhibition in the Bender Museum in California, and the reason for that is that the current political situation between the West and Russia, there's a lot of tension, especially in Europe. So that makes this project still very very topical, because it shows how the situation was in Europe during the Cold War. But it also shows how things can become again today, for this new Cold War, because when you look at these images, then you sense the hyper alertness of today, and of the hyper alertness you had at that time, and the distrust between the parties involved. It's still very tangible. You can almost feel it when you visit those places. And so in this atmosphere, this is what I wanted to capture in these strange, weird locations of this war, which was never really a war, but it was a real existing conflict at a time, and a conflict which is still actually in a way going on today.
Yes, totally, 100%. Yes, we still live in a world that there's the good and the bad. There are two sides of the it's a dichotomy. It's a society based on dichotomy.
Yeah, and there is a lot of gray in between, of course.
Yes. Martin, I think we just ran out of time, and I would love to see more. And I think we're going to have have another meeting. We're going to have we have to find an excuse to meet again.
Yeah, sure.
So you can show more of your projects. So thank you very much one more time, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, well, thank you for thank you for having me, and again, it's a big honor to be included in your festival. I'm very glad with it, and unfortunately I cannot come over, but I'm looking forward to see the images of the installation when everything is ready.
Okay, we'll make sure you see that very soon. And okay, see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, it was great talking to you.
Great talking to you.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.